I'd like to say welcome to the viewers. My name is Kaiso Tsita, and we at Encounters are privileged and excited to be speaking to Mr. PJ Coetzee, who's the director of a short film called Ulwandle, The Ocean. Mr. Coetzee also provided a unique perspective when portraying this film, because this film is dedicated to the lives of seamen and the art of fishing. PJ is a passionate outdoorsman and an award-winning director and cinematographer whose path into film started after spending 2 years abroad, working as a sailing, diving, and fishing guide. After returning to South Africa, he completed his degree in film at the Open View Institute and went on to establish his production company, Bonanza Films, where he fulfilled his role as the writer, director, and cinematographer. PJ has been part of numerous international film and television productions. He's at his happiest when he can combine his love for extreme adventure sports, such as rock climbing, free diving, sailing, trail running, with his passion for filmmaking, conservation, and storytelling. PJ, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege.
So for the first question, I see that you're a man of the sea, of conservation, and as well as storytelling. Is there anything in particular that led you down this path?
So yeah, I love the ocean. I love being in it. I love being on it. The last few years, I've been moving my my work more into doing purely underwater cinematography. So, but I also, after finishing my job as a film lecturer and sort of starting to do more of our own productions, I developed a very deep love for telling human stories, especially sort of making portraits and intimate portraits. And I wanted to figure out how I could combine those two worlds, how I could combine my love for the ocean and underwater cinematography with telling human stories. And yeah, I often also, to be quite honest with you, start projects and then I don't finish them because I sort of lose interest. So I knew that if I was going to start something like this, I needed to do it and make it really interesting for myself and challenging also. So yeah, that was what sort of led this this whole approach.
Okay, that's very interesting. Why would you say did you want to tell this particular story? How did you come about, rather, let me start with that. How did you come about finding this particular story?
Yeah, it was pretty difficult, honestly. So yeah, just off the bat, this is definitely the most difficult project I've ever done, and yeah, it was in terms of many aspects of it, but how I sort of found the stories was purely by luck, actually. I knew I wanted to make a film about artisanal fishermen, and not necessarily something with a very overt environmental message, sort of preaching anything specifically. I wanted to tell the story of people who are reliant on the sea for their livelihoods. So I needed to find these guys, but also wasn't interested in doing big, large-scale fishing. I needed small, artisanal scale so that I could tell the stories of people who are directly sort of in a one-to-one relationship with the ocean. So I knew that in Lambert's Bay, there's a big West Coast rock lobster industry. So I just got on a plane and flew to Cape Town and just drove to Lambert's Bay, and I was just sort of hanging around there, walking around the fishing community. Sort of, I didn't take a camera or anything the first time. I just went and I just asked people. I was like, who's a character who catches rock lobster? So yeah, I think it was super weird for everybody. They were all just sort of looking at me like, who's this guy walking around the houses? They're sort of like asking people to make a movie. But after I found John, and I just knew he was the guy for me. So yeah, we spoke, we made arrangements, and then yeah, a couple of months later, I went down with the crew. And the same with Michael. So I knew that there was a bit easier because I knew the guys were doing the fishing with the Kralls in Cozy Bay, and so I knew there would be a story there. And with that one, I just booked a couple of guys for a week. We were working in a very small crew with 3 guys. It was myself, another cameraman, and a sound person. And we just went, and we hoped we could find somebody. We went for a week, and we just sort of also same thing. So we were very fortunate in all the cases. We were just very fortunate that people helped us out and pointed us in the right direction. And I think they could, well, I hope they could tell we were genuine. Sort of, you know, we were just trying to sort of tell some stories. Yeah.
I think,
so that was
sorry about that. I think you're right when you say, well, I could see that you're being genuine in the way that you wanted to tell the story. Because, you know, when I'm watching the story, it almost feels as if we're having a conversation, or rather listening to people that we've long known when it comes to John and Mike. How did you establish that warm tone that you conveyed through the story?
Thank you very much. That's a big compliment. That's really nice of you to say. I guess anybody who makes documentaries sort of strives for that. So thank you very much. Yeah, yeah, that was difficult. John was easy for me because we both spoke Afrikaans. So you know, and he's also a very outgoing person. So he likes talking, and he's got lots of stories, and you know, he was very comfortable. And to be honest, I think he's actually been on TV a couple of times before, just you know, when sort of lifestyle programs go to do little pieces. Everybody always ends up with John. So he was, you know, he was very comfortable. But Mike was very difficult, honestly, because so it was very important for me to do these stories in native languages, or in the languages that people spoke at home. And so I knew when I went down to Cozy Bay, I would be doing it in isiZulu or Tonga. But so I was very fortunate. My cameraman, or the other cameraman, Max Mabota, we've worked together for ages. He's Venda, but he speaks good Zulu. So I've been doing Zulu classes for a while, but I mean, it's not, you know, sharp, you know, that's like, I can't conduct an interview in Zulu, especially not when there's a bit of a variant on the accent and so on. Yeah, I took Max along. He would be there anyway because we work together often. But I prepared a list of questions when we were doing the interviews, and I said to Max, you know, like, this is what we want. You know, go for it. Just chat with this guy. But it was, if I can be honest with you, it was so frustrating because you know, when you're conducting an interview, you want to respond to what somebody's saying. And here I'm just standing there, you know, like I'm manning a camera and this guy's talking, and I can make out words, but that's it. So, you know, the whole time I'm stopping, I'm saying, like, is this good? Is he saying good stuff? You know, it's like, oh, no, it's really good. You know, just let it go. I'm like, but So yeah, honestly, that was difficult. It was really difficult. So we stopped often, and then we had to sort of run through everything, and, you know, just go through what he said, and then sort of, so I could get a gauge of where we should take stuff from there. But I mean, I guess I could sort of tell that he was saying some good stuff, or, you know, you can tell that somebody's, you know, engaging. But then honestly, the most difficult part of this process was the edit, because this was a first for me, is editing in a language that I was completely unversed in. And again, like, I can hear when certain things are said, but as you know, like, when you're editing documentary, you need to be really, really tuned into the nuances of what people are saying and sort of get the emotion across and things. And sometimes you need to make really fine cuts. without losing meaning. So I was in the dark. So it was, that process was, I mean, yeah, I could go into that, but it was a monster process. Yeah.
I suppose this making this kind of documentary was different as opposed to making telling other stories that you have. How often did you find yourself in the story where you were trying to steer the conversation of your subject in a specific direction, or as opposed to letting them speak freely?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I mean, it's obviously, well, yeah, that's a difficult thing, because when you go in, you've got an idea of what you want to get. So you can't just, well, I guess you could if you've got enough time, but I couldn't just let them talk blindly, because it would be all over the place. My focus was their relationship with the ocean. That was the big thing. So I wanted to get that across. So there were definitely times when I had to sort of bring things back and say, okay, well, but how are you experiencing things like climate change or declining fish stocks and so on? Where I think for people who live in that world, they don't necessarily talk about that. They do talk about that stuff, but they're talking about it in a different way than we would, or than I would. Who I'm not, although I do a lot of work in or under the water, I'm not a fish. I'm not an artisanal commercial fisherman or somebody who's fishing for a living. So yeah, no, I had to, but obviously I had to be very conscious about the fact that I shouldn't lead people to get them to say what I want them to say. But I mean, both of those characters are they're such strong people. They wouldn't. They wouldn't just say what I wanted them to say. There's no way. I quickly realized that I was going to get what I was going to get, and then, but that would be good. So I had to realign my expectations also. Definitely, yeah.
And then, you know, with the story that John has, Mike has, it's almost like two different ways of kind of living with the sea. And I feel like that was what made the documentary just that much more interesting for me. Could you talk about what the significance was for you to portray these two different types of fishermen, instead of, like, you know, having this dual protagonist instead, or dual story instead of one?
Yeah, sure. So initially the idea for the film started as, so I was working on this while working on other things. So I couldn't just embark on this film and just go and do it. So initially my idea was to just, whenever I had time, to go and find a story and do a portrait about somebody. And I actually wanted to do many. I wanted to do 5 little stories around the coast and then put them all together. But then I did these 2, and I realized there was so much that it would just become sort of a montage, and, you know, just sort of pretty visuals, but no substance, if I just sort of try to squash them both into sort of, let's say, 10 minutes each, and then just get a bunch more. So and then I purposefully did because they're both basically extreme on the west coast and east South Africa. They're right basically opposite one another. So without splitting hairs, that's about as far west and east as you can go. So I thought that was already a nice contradiction, because it's essentially, they're similar stories, but just with completely different contexts. So yeah, after I did, we filmed Mike first, and then I wanted to just edit that first and see how it looked before I went to do the next one. And once we started getting a nice structure together on that, I knew, okay, well, you know, this is a little bit, there's a little bit more here than I thought we were going to get. So let's do one more and spend, you know, also spend 5 days with this person and just film it and get a lot, get enough, as much as possible. And then we've got 2 strong stories that we can sort of bounce off one another. Yeah, that was the idea, because I wanted to show that this is not just a single situation. Even though the context changes and the geography changes and the way that these people interact with the ocean changes, they've still got the same problems, and they've still got the same issues. Everybody is everybody's sitting in the same boat, if I can use that that metaphor. But I think if I can just sort of segue onto something from that, that was I think the main reason why I wanted to do this was because I love the ocean and I spend a lot of time with it. I wanted to make something that brought some sort of awareness to what's happening in our oceans and our impact on them. But I felt that maybe if I showed that people are being impacted by our actions, and not necessarily just nature, because obviously we know. Well, I hope people are starting to know that we are destroying the world's oceans, but it's not just the oceans that are suffering; it's people that are suffering. So I thought, well, that might be another angle to take us, just so that people are actually also, and that we will be the ultimate victims of our own actions. So I wanted to show how lives are being affected, and not just the lives of animals, because obviously that is something, but that's to make proper nature documentaries in that sense, you need massive budgets and massive amounts of time, and that's a whole different realm.
Okay. And what I've heard you speak about over time is how your story kind of grew as you were on this journey. You had 10 ideas, you put them down to 2. You had the John and Mike, who had their own strong characters that really came through in the film. So then I think the question is, from the point of conceptualizing your idea to the final edit, how has your story, was there anything in particular, just how your story evolved in terms of when you're working or when you're collaborating with other people around you?
Yeah. So in my experience in making documentary films, I've learned that it's very sorry, just to take a step back, I direct and I film and I edit, so I'm sort of one of those Swiss Army knife guys, I guess. But I like that because I like filming with the edit already in mind. But saying that, I've also learned that it often is a better idea to get somebody else to edit your material. If you brief them correctly, they'll often come with a proper different perspective and less strings attached, and very in my opinion, most times they'll give you a better product that isn't as self-indulgent. So the post process, and as it developed, the final product did turn out quite a bit different to what I expected. I worked with a couple of editors. My editor that I work with often his name is Jean Kleinans. He's an incredible editor, and he edited the Matambo story, John Matambo, and that was really it was a pleasure to work with him. He just took it. When I got the first edit back, I couldn't. I was so happy. And then I actually knew it was after that edit. Then I knew, okay, well, there's something there, because I mean, this is one of those things. Or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but you're often so filled with so much doubt, self-doubt. There's so many times in the process where you just stop and you think, oh, what am I doing? This is just why did I even start doing this? I should just stop this. I mean, I almost gave up a lot of times, and I have to thank my wife for just sort of pushing me to finish it. But the story of Mike, that took many permutations. So if I can just explain that process and how the story kept changing, initially I had to get somebody to translate and transcribe the entire batch of interviews we did, and that was about almost 3 hours worth of footage, just solid talking. So I got somebody to translate it for me. Then we transcribed it. Then I created subtitles for that, so now I could watch through everything. But then I thought I could maybe edit that because we had done subtitles with timecode. But I realized very quickly that I couldn't, because I wasn't up on the nuances. I was cutting sentences in the wrong places. So then I got, I struggled to actually find a person who could help me with the edit, who was fluent in isiZulu, who had time to help me out. And yeah, so that was a long process. But I finally found a guy, Sianda Arasi, and he created. I asked him to just create sort of a skeleton for me, and then once he created a skeleton out of the interviews, then I could go and find B-roll and cutaways that I thought would work with that. So I took his edit, then I basically built on it, and then I sort of started re-editing it. Then I have another friend who taught me, who teaches Zulu, and I took classes with her, Nana Zajiji, and she helped me with again taking what I had done, translating it, because I had rough translations, but then together we sort of really tweaked it, and then got that to the point where, because this is really terrifying for me, because I don't want to put something out on say, but I don't know. So I had to go and check and double check and say to everybody, like Nana especially, I went and I think I made her crazy, because we sat there and I was like, we have to watch this thing, and we're going to fix the subtitles so that they mean exactly what people are saying. And you must just, because I don't know. I don't know. So it's
It was a big learning experience.
Big learning curve. Yeah, it was good for my Zulu, but wow, it was not easy to edit like that. Yeah, so I'm gonna think twice before doing that again. Or if I do, then I'm gonna make sure that I budget properly and I have enough of a team behind me that I can just hand it over and say, here guys, you understand the language, do it. Yeah, and then obviously I had also had doubts in terms of, am I even qualified to be telling the story of somebody that I can't even speak their language? Like, what, I'm not from that world. Sort of why am I there? What should I even be telling that story? Because it's a completely different world to the one I live in. But I'm fascinated by it. So
I feel like, personally, from my perspective, I feel like you really showed me a world that I never particularly paid attention to. So it was very informative, and I also feel like it was something that I needed to see in learning more about South Africa and the different cultures and communities that live in this country. But as a last question, closing question, I wanted to ask you if there's any one standout challenge that you faced in the story that moving forward has become a valuable lesson for your films.
Well, so firstly, thank you for the kind words. It's really nice to hear, because it's weird when you make a film, especially something like this. You sort of put it out there, and this will be the first festival where it's shown. But yeah, it's difficult to gauge, if people watch it or what the impact is. So thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. Wow, yeah, I learned a lot. I really did. I learned a lot. So firstly, if I can put one lesson forward, cameras don't like salt water. So if you're going out on a small boat, or if you're filming waist deep in amongst the fish crawls, don't dunk your camera in the water, because that happened. So we lost one camera. So all the DOPs out there, be careful, or at least have good insurance on your camera gear. That's a good lesson. But in seriousness, I think when it comes to documentary content, it's it's just, it sounds so cliched, but it's just sort of like not giving up and powering through. Because if you believed in an idea, and you believed in it enough to start pursuing it, then it most likely is a good enough idea to follow through. And it does get it. I mean, like I said earlier, I got to many points in the process where I just felt like I just lost energy, because it was just, even though the film is only 36 minutes long, it was not an easy edit to get it there. So there were many times when I just felt, like I don't know where this is going. It feels like I'm just sort of blindly falling around and flailing in the dark. So and just being, just sort of getting back and getting on with it. I found, it's the one thing that if I do projects like this again, when I do projects like this, I know that there will be stages when it just feels completely overwhelming. And when you start putting together a documentary, you're building puzzle pieces in reverse sort of thing. It's like you've got an idea, but you don't really know what the picture looks like, so you just have to throw yourself at it, and then everything falls in place. So yeah, it just reaffirmed that for me, is that if you just sort of keep on. I was quite lucky in a sense that when the hard lockdown hit us last year, I had already finished filming, so I could actually just sit and edit. So I was very fortunate in that sense, that I needed time, and then all of a sudden, even though I wasn't making any money, I at least had time to sit and edit. So that was good. Yeah, I think, and then the other thing is just to surround yourself with people that are better than you. That's always, for me, it's sort of, you stick with the pros. That's something that I've learned from other professionals that I work with, and I feel that it's like the best advice, especially when making documentary films. Because if you're just a one-man operator, it's obviously there's a it's cool to film, and I've done a lot of stuff where it's just me. But then if you're working with other people who are good in their specific fields, then there's so much less for you to worry about, and then everything happens organically, and you feed off one another, and then it just makes the whole process easier, and you get a better product. So when initially I would do my own sound. I've learned now, no, I get Matthew, he's my sound guy, and then I don't have to worry about sound. I can worry about content. And it's the same with I get Max. He's another great camera operator. He comes with me. So, and we unit, we work together, and we do stuff, and we sort of dance. I always say we go dancing, because we dance around each other, and we feel what we want and what we need to do. So that's another lesson that I can't emphasize enough, is there's definitely a place for the one-man band. And when you can't find people, go do it yourself for sure. But get people who are good at what they do, and it's just going to elevate everything that you do, and they're going to help you with ideas, and just developing your. So yeah, surround yourself with people who are good or better than you, because you can only learn, and you're going to get a great product at the end of the day.
That was very insightful. I think a lot of us will take your words to heart, including myself as a filmmaker. On behalf of Encounters, I'd also like to thank you again for taking the time to speak to us and share your insights on your work. We wish you well for the future, and I'm sure we'll see your work again. For those of us who would like to follow you, is there any way that we can?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, PJ_Kotze, so PJ_KOTZE_Cine. Yeah, I mean, our production company, Bonanza Films, is online, bonanzafilms.co.za, although we don't update things as often as we should. So yeah, Instagram is the place. Otherwise, we've got a travel show on Cakenet at the moment, coming out in July, Elders, Namibia. So yeah, that's another sort of different aspect of the work we do. Yeah, check you on Instagram, or else I'll see you in the water. You see me in a wetsuit somewhere with a camera, come say hi.
Okay, thank you so much, PJ.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's a pleasure. I'd also like to thank the festival sponsors for their support and the public for joining us. I ask that you as the public also continue to engage with us on our social media platforms, which you can connect with through our website at encounters.co.za. Thank you so much again.